It's 7 o'clock in Southern California, and time for the Thursday night D-Star Roundtable for August 10th, 2017. This is Mike in 6HKH, your net control. This roundtable is held every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 0200 UTC, on XRF002A and a constellation of X reflectors, including XRF310A, XRF555 Alpha, and our multi-protocol X reflector XLX212 Alpha. This is a technical net dedicated to D-Star and Open Digital Systems. It is a group effort, so that means that we hope stations will join us as we discuss several topics tonight. To do so, wait for me to call for stations, and you can thereafter start a topic, answer a question, ask a question, and enter into the discussion. Just please remember, do not quick key or tailgate, please. I will pause regularly to let you key up, and I ask that participating stations do the same. Now, we don't take formal check-ins or do a roll call just to give us more time to talk D-Star. Net Control is online at roundtable.tech, T-E-C-H. So in the address field of your favorite browser, simply type in Roundtable, it's all one word, roundtable.tech. That will take you to the D-Star Roundtable Forum Board, and there you will find a real-time chat feature called the Shoutbox. You can use that to contact me as well as to post information relevant to the topic at hand, such as links and quick notes. We ask that stations offering a web address in conjunction with their presentation post that URL or DNS in the Shoutbox so that those listening now or later on a recording can link to that website or document location. So once again, go to Roundtable, all one word, .tech on your favorite browser. The Roundtable Forum Board, which is a ProBoards product, was down for a few hours this afternoon, and if you tried to get into it, log into it, take a look at the various posts or post something in the Shoutbox, it's back up, and it seems to be functioning just fine. If it stops functioning for you, just to key up and let me know, because obviously you won't be able to type anything into the Shoutbox if it's not working. So, hopefully we'll keep our fingers crossed, and we, quite frankly, expect it to work just fine throughout tonight's net. At least I knock on wood or avoid cracks to step on. All right, let me see if I have it back. That does seem to be the case. We had a station that probably inadvertently keyed up and didn't realize it because it didn't hear anything, just some background noise. And so I had unkeyed to both reset the timer and to deal with that double. It's gone, so we can proceed. Now, at the close of tonight's roundtable, tonight's Shoutbox is moved to the Shoutbox history, which is above the general roundtable discussion board. Podcast listeners get the Shoutbox downloaded automatically. So first up, on tonight's Thursday night D-Star Roundtable is 60 seconds of D-Star Basics. And for 60 seconds of D-Star Basics, I thought it would be appropriate to revisit a topic that we first discussed in almost a year ago. And it's a topic that a question comes up from time to time. Well, is it a hotspot or is it an access point? And especially in light of the new ERS, they're not new really anymore. In fact, they're giving them away. But the ICOM radios, they use terminology such as access point and terminal mode. So I'm going to borrow from Jim K6JM's blog. He calls it Hand Notes, and he has a document there, a writing. It's an opinion piece of his. Well, it discusses is it hotspots versus access points, giving him full credit for just about everything you're going to hear. There really is no specific arbiter of terms that we use in our hobby. There's a lot of tradition, and sometimes we refer to hotspots as hotspots. Sometimes we refer to access points as hotspots. Jim sees a difference, and I agree with him. We use them interchangeably, but there is a technical difference, at least as far as the traditional use goes. And hotspot is an internet-connected PC with appropriate software, usually a modem of some sort, where there has to be, frankly, and then an analog FM transceiver. Now, these are more particularly the GMSK type modem and transceiver combinations. They're traditionally known as the hotspot. They're capable of usually running between 5 and 40 watts, and you don't usually run at the maximum legal power, but hotspots usually have a good outside antenna and provide coverage for up to a few miles even further. Now, if you add a duplexer and a second radio, then you can turn your simplex hotspot, which is what we're talking about, into what would otherwise be a full duplex repeater. Now, the access point, on the other hand, is unattached to a PC. It can be connected, but is usually a small device. It's again working with an internet connected, well, it says PC or a single PC board, and a single card computer board, is what I meant to say. And it uses a low power transceiver chip in that device, which is the big difference between an access point and a hotspot, which gets rid of the need for an external transceiver. These devices usually operate, as most of us know, in the 10 milliwatt range, very small antennas, rubber ducks plugged into the back of the device, the radio device, whatever that may be, usually DVAP. Just a minute. So, from Jim's perspective and the perspective of many, including myself, the access points are just simpler to set up, smaller, and ideal to do what they are designed to do. And if you have a red DVAP plugged into your Raspberry Pi, that probably is best described as an access point. And if you have a GMSK modem set up involving a FM transceiver, that is probably more properly called a hotspot. But here's the bottom line. We all know what you're talking about. So basically, you don't have to worry about it too much, but for those new to the hobby and hear access point and hotspot, you can think of them interchangeably, but there is a difference, and that's just what I described. And I appreciate Jim K6JM allowing me to borrow from his board and his blog, really, and use his view in presenting 60 seconds of D-Star Basics tonight. So, are there any announcements for the Thursday night D-Star Roundtable? We'll take announcements now. Stations, please key up. Well, didn't get anybody to bite on that. The only announcement that I've had is one that we've mentioned before, and that is the HamCon 2017. It's the ARRL Southwestern Division Convention held in Torrance at the Marriott Redondo Beach on September 15 through 17, 2017. There's quite a website behind this, and if you get any ARRL emails, you'll see usually something regarding that. It's called HamCon 2017, and it's, of course, local to us here in Southern California. I'm sure there are other hamventions that are going on, but this is a big one, sponsored by ARRL. And for those that may think about going, many people drive there every day. It's always fun to stay, but I can tell you that the hotel fills up quickly, so that's the only announcement I have. And I don't have any other announcements that were forwarded to me to present tonight. although we have some interesting stuff coming up on the solar eclipse as far as a net event here, along with a bunch of other stuff happening just about everywhere. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So let me check any other announcements. Please, Kev, now.
K6.
And we say hello to John, K6KD. Go ahead.
Well, I didn't know if you were going to call for any comments about the 60 seconds of V-Star Basics. So I have one, but if you want to proceed with the announcements, I just wanted to key up real quick.
Well, I'm glad you did. I forgot to, and I think the page I usually read from fell on the floor or fluttered away, because I usually say, which is what you were waiting for, John, was that we accept comments and criticisms, contradictions, updates, anything along those lines. None of us take offense to corrections, and whether it's the 60 seconds of V-Star Basics or a topic that you hear tonight, we don't allow people to get upset. We just want to get out the facts, and if there's more than one opinion concerning a topic, we entertain them all because we don't like to guess or speculate. And sometimes I, end up getting tongue-tied and misstate things, and I don't want to do that. And if you catch me doing that, please key up and say so. So, with that having been said belatedly, K6KD, go ahead.
N5WD.
Okay, I think there was another station that keyed up, so let me just make sure. Okay, I temporarily turned my other radio up. I don't think there's any official arbiter, and I have no issues with that particular point of view or opinion, but it is an opinion. I don't know of anything official written that absolutely says makes that distinction. But I have no problems if somebody chooses to do that. I think it becomes really a matter of what people commonly use and how they communicate. I think it's just like someone insisting that you don't call tissue paper Kleenex if it's not manufactured by, I think it's Kimberly Clark. That it would be incorrect to refer to tissue as Kleenex if it's from another manufacturer. And by the same token, you shouldn't refer to Jello, or what we call Jello, as unless it comes from the manufacturer. We should call it gelatin dessert. Well, I don't think so. I think it's what becomes commonly used. Usage goes into the dictionary eventually. So as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, they can be used interchangeably. I usually say hotspot, but I'll put in parentheses access point, or I'll do the other way around if I think somebody's going to be offended. But as far as I'm concerned, for all practical purposes, they can be used interchangeably. Just my opinion. Back to Nick.
All right, John, appreciate that. Yeah, this was just food for thought because we hear both access point and hotspot, and while there is a difference that you can associate with it, frankly, I don't think it matters because we understand what you're talking about. It's the end result. You're not using a radio to talk to a repeater and a gateway that's connected to the X reflectors. Instead, you're using a device, whether it's an access point or hotspot. I fully agree. Thanks, John. Next, we say welcome to Wayne N5WD. Go ahead.
There we go. Sorry about that. N5WD. I was trying to change access point / hotspot, and sorry, didn't mean to key up at that time.
No problem. And in any kind of inadvertent key up, because we all do it, you drop the radio, dog grabs the mic, runs off with it, you sit on it. Sometimes devices, although not too often anymore, there's maybe one or two that sometimes just launch off and transmit on their own. You know, it happens because we capture it all here. Nobody escapes as I'm watching the screen. So do just as Wayne did, just say it was inadvertent, and I'll take you off the list and move right on. So, any comments, follow up to tonight's 60 seconds, or anything you've heard thus far, please key up. All right, nothing heard. So there's a couple shoutbox posts at the beginning of the roundtable, and then two have been added, and we have one station, you'll see an AA7ST, a new D-Star user, with a question as far as the difference between a reflector and a repeater. That is something we would normally cover in 60 seconds of D-Star Basics, but given that he's asking, set the station that wishes to briefly describe the difference for this new and perhaps other D-Star users, the difference between selecting a reflector on the radio as opposed to selecting a repeater on the radio. Stations, please key up. So nobody knows the difference between a reflector and a repeater. That is very odd to believe, and suggests that something's wrong here. You know, it's just a real simple answer. What's a repeater and what's a reflector, and how does the repeater connect to the reflector? That's all we need. Just give it a try. It's easy. All you gotta do is key up. Alrighty. Well, it's pretty obvious. Maybe this is almost too obvious. But first of all, I think it bears reminding. Just a minute, I got to lean over here and grab something off the floor. Probably the best guide to D-Star operation is a little book. It's not so little anymore, but it's called the Nifty EZ. That's Echo-Zebra Caps Guide to D-Star Operation. It's in its third edition, although there may be a fourth out. And it's a nifty guide. There's a number of them, but this one is the Nifty EZ Guide to D-Star Operation. It's written by Bernie N6FN. It is probably the best book for beginning to, let's say, intermediate D-Star users. It explains things very well. The third edition is a bit behind the times, but it has a chapter on reflectors, a chapter on repeaters and whatnot. So I'd like to offer that to anyone that would like to think about this. But basically, on your radio, a repeater has a frequency, just like any other two-way repeater. The D-Star repeaters are no different, except that they have a gateway, which is a computer, that allows you to connect that repeater through a series of commands to reflectors, which are probably best described as conference boards, which you would find if you were going to link into a conference, or if you have a telephone system at work, you might have a conference board, and it allows multiple users to be heard all at the same time. Whoever talks on one side is heard by everyone that's connected, and you can have a whole bunch of repeaters connected to a single reflector. Stations can connect directly to that reflector. With a radio, you cannot connect directly to a reflector. You need some device that connects you to the internet, and that would be the access point or hotspot, as we discussed. There are other ways of going about business, but to connect directly to a reflector using your radio, you need a DVAP, again, a hotspot or access point to which you transmit on your radio. It then, with this RF module, usually a DVAP, will then take your transmission from your radio and send it off over the internet to the reflector, and you're heard by everyone connected to that reflector. That's it in real simple terms. So, that now, I hope that answers it. Now, let me see if anybody else wants to add to this. I don't want to belabor it, but, you know, if it was asked, it's worth answering. Real quickly, I'll just see if anybody has any contradictions or suggestions or anything further. Please key up. And as we were talking, some additional posts came to the shout box, and a couple of them are directed to K6KD. Of course, we always love hearing from KC9USC, who expresses what I like to say every day. That's my prayer about D-Star. So, KD already answers it. Well, so the shout box is moving right along, and we'll just leave things alone. I didn't see any new posts in the current discussions category on the Roundtable Forum board or anything new in the general discussions, etc. And if you guys would like to peruse those, if something popped up here after we started, maybe somebody can bring that to my attention. I want to begin by getting to follow-ups to last week's topics, and more particularly to do a follow-up, because some work was done concerning our demonstration of the 4K transcoding, which at present, as a demonstration, and is not yet, completely operational on the constellation of X reflectors. It eventually will be, but we wanted to bring it online from a station from a reflector that has transcoding modules in Europe, and then allow you guys to see what it sounds like, and just to demo it to give you an idea as to what's coming here to the constellation of X reflectors here on the Kings of Digital Network and the Thursday Night D-Star Roundtable. So, because this particular project belongs to K6KD, I thought I'd call on him first to see what, if anything, was learned as a result of last week's demonstration, if anything new has changed, or just generally his view of how it went, and then we'll take comments from listeners. So K6KD, if you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, well, good evening again, Mike. I just have to double check to make sure. I would say overall, the demo was a great success. The great majority of stations heard high quality audio transcoded from DMR to D-Star, and I heard high quality. A few of us who were on DMR also heard high quality audio from D-Star back to DMR. Most of the discussion about that pertained to differences in the radio. Ultimately depending upon the differences in the microphone of the radio and perhaps the speaker. Overall, it was a huge success. We did notice that a small percent of the stations did not receive the high quality audio that the other stations received, and we wanted to go into that. The current demo consists of a couple of different servers in Europe, not on commercial grade internet lines. It's just because of the way they're set up during development, and the net effect of that looks like the hops across the ocean and back together with the local infrastructure in Europe introduced some jitter into the stream. Now, what jitter is a unevenness in latency. Latency is the time that it takes a packet to go from one place to another. If one packet goes faster than another packet, or groups of packets go at different speeds and arrive, instead of having a smooth flow of packets at the end, you get clumps, jitter. Now, the question comes up. Let me reset. With the great majority of stations, it wasn't a problem, but with a very small percentage, it was. I believe that the most likely situation is that for those few stations that did have problems, there was also a small amount of jitter introduced between that station or the reflector and the station. That doesn't necessarily mean that there was anything really wrong with the internet connection of the station, but possibly a small amount of additional jitter introduced. That small amount of jitter could very likely be something you wouldn't even notice if you had in this case a D-Star, something that wasn't transcoded, because you would just be dealing with a small amount of jitter that the station could easily handle. But if that small amount of jitter was added to the more significant jitter on the transcoded stream coming back from Europe, that could have been enough to exceed the threshold of the radio or the software actually in keeping things clean. That is basically in the software. Software has what's called a de-jitter queue or de-jitter buffer that corrects that. Most likely, let me just reset again. There's a very good chance that when everything is brought here, not only in the U.S. but more importantly on high quality fiber optic lines, it won't be a factor at all. We'll have to wait and see. I'm in the process now of putting the finishing touches on transcoding server here that is on a high quality fiber optic line. And I think towards the end of August, I'm guessing when the next version of XLX comes out that will work with the transcoding server, we'll be able to deploy it here and start to roll it out. So with a couple of little glitches, I'd say overall it was a great success. Back to you, Mike, from K6KD.
All right, John, thank you. I appreciate it. And hang on just for a second, guys. And in 6, HK's back with you. My propeller blower came on, and for some reason I wasn't able to find the keys to turn it off. And I had to do that because otherwise you guys would be annoyed with the noise in the background. So, well, I mean, as I understand it, well, you explained there's no reason for me to belabor this. Anyone else have any comments or have taken a look at this? I didn't know if others that are involved in the 4K transcoding project wish to comment. We'll take you now. Please key up. All right, nothing. No, hang on. I don't have an audio link. Just a minute. I don't know if we have an audio link to out to 310 of 555. Anyone on the reflectors 310 alpha or 555 alpha? Do you copy me? Please key up.
K6KD N5W.
K6KD and N5WD. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, Mike, I hear you fine on both 002 alpha and 310 alpha. Back to you.
And N5WD, go ahead.
Mike, I'm on 555 Alpha. I moved over here because I was getting a lot of packet loss on 2 Alpha, and I hear you fine.
Alrighty. Well, the reason why this is important to me is, first of all, it helps me. I have the radio set to beat me when I unkey to confirm that it's going out over all the other reflectors. I also use it to occasionally listen to stations if one reflector, for one reason or another, doesn't present me with the audio because of internet connectivity problems. And I don't know if I'm having an internet problem here tonight. I've had some strange things happen. You know, my PC that I run the net on just crashed out of the blue for no good reason. And now I've got a DVAP and Raspberry Pi device that I use pretty heavily is not responding. And so I don't know. Well, at least, as long as I'm getting out, it's just that I have no way of knowing, independent of asking somebody, if in fact there's an audio connection from XRF002A, which I'm using, and out to the other link reflectors in the constellation of X reflectors, as we call it. So, if for some reason you guys on listening to 555, 310, or 212 don't hear audio, key up and let somebody know, or come to the shout box and say so that we don't. So that you don't lose out on what's going on tonight anyway. So that's the diversion for now. All right, anything further? There's a comment in the shout box concerning the test. I've had numerous emails that have come through from stations saying that the test sounded good to them. They were appreciative of it. John mentioned there were a couple of issues that, you probably heard that back to that device when you reconnected. It apparently decided to just, yeah, there I am. All right, it just decided that it was going to go down, which is so odd. Anyway, so I think it went pretty well. At this point, let me ask K6KD, do you want to talk about if we're going to do another demo, or if you don't know, that's fine as well, and if there's, some estimation, you don't have to get into specifics as to when we might start running tests here on, as opposed to a demo, which is what we did last Thursday, but running tests here on the Kings of Digital Network. K6KD, go ahead.
Well, right now I'm finishing up the. Sorry, I turned down the other radio. Don't want to do that again. I'm finishing up the installing all the software for the transcoding server here. I've got the hardware all set up, and that should be completed in about a day or so. And then the next thing will be to wait for the next version of XLX 2.0. And I'm guessing that it'll be around the end of August, maybe the third week of August, possibly the last week. It's just my guess, nothing firm. And once that happens, probably within within a day or so, we'll start we'll start trying it, and maybe not during nets, but on the side. And if it seems to be okay, then we may introduce it and then on a large net like this, maybe with short key ups just to make sure there aren't issues, and then go from there. Back to you, Mike.
Alrighty, sounds good. Yeah, that's what I would expect, that we bring it up slowly, so to speak, to the extent that on a big net you can do that, but it's better that way, and then we'll see how it persists and stamp out any bugs as they arise and take on both the cheerleading squad as well as those that are scratching their heads wondering what are they doing over there. All right, anybody, before we move on, anybody have any questions about the test last week, or if you're listening for the first time, want to know what in the heck we're talking about, we'll take you now, and then we'll carry on. N6HKH with a Thursday night D-Star Roundtable. Stations, please keep up.
N3WZU.
Hey, Wes. Thanks for joining us. N3WZU. Go ahead.
Well, hey, Mike. Yep. I was here for the test, and I really liked what I heard. Coming from DMR, and I thought it was a good test. And although I wanted to stretch out there and see if I can hook my DV4 Mini to it and see if I can crash it, but no, I didn't get any permission to do that, so that's fine. The question I have, and I don't know if you went over it, I know I'm a little thick and slow. What is going to be the capability of this? I guess in a nutshell, is it just being able to cross mode? Is it going to be able to cross all the modes into one box and out to or one chat room or whatever you want to call it, out to its prospective modes to everyone? If I come in on D-Star and someone else comes in on Fusion, they cross modes, all the magic happens in the box. Is that it in a nutshell? Or is there going to be more capabilities to it? Or are we still finding out? Thanks for taking my question, Mike. Back to you, N3WZU.
Well, I appreciate the question, and the answers are yes and no. But I think I'll pass it to K6KD to hopefully fill that in a bit. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, upcoming it's going to involve D-Star and DMR, not Yaesu System Fusion. That will probably come, maybe months down the road. It's not as going between DMR and Yaesu System Fusion. Not a big deal because they both use the same MB2 Plus codec. D-Star is a bigger problem. I think the biggest impact will be the ability to use the variety of low cost and pretty good quality DMR radios married to the D-Star infrastructure. I know it gets into probably a different topic. The capability will support multiple simultaneous channels. So the constellation on modules A, linked up to a DMR talk group, will represent one of those channels. There'll be other channels available that will be allocated TBD. Back to Net.
All right, John, thanks. And, the capabilities of the transcoder, look at it this way. The tackle is on the most difficult, which is DMR to D-Star, D-Star to DMR. And essentially, you'll connect to a XLX reflector using a talk group assigned to a multitude of modules. There'll be one that, and I'm not quite sure how, and we're not presenting the talk groups, but there'll be different ways of connecting to it. And if you're on DMR, you'll hear D-Star, and if you're on D-Star, you'll hear DMR. Yaesu Fusion it's my understanding from the people that are involved in at least the software side of this, will be around the corner, but that's almost too easy. And you can do that now with your OpenSpot and possibly other devices, but that will be added. And ultimately, it's everything that isn't D-Star but is digital and open source will be accessible to D-Star. D-Star will be accessible to them. And it's going to be as if and frankly, you won't be able to notice the difference as far as that goes. So that's just my 2 cents, and I'm sure that there was no need for me to pile on top of John's response, but doggone it, I'm excited about it. N3WZU, anything further?
All right, well, I guess that opens up another question. For the end user, I guess at some point you're going to announce what's connected to what. Will the end user be able to change anything on the sense that if you can't come in on a say a DVAP of your own, will you be able to make the system choose what talk groups you go to? Or eventually when Fusion's added, will you have that control? Or is the system just going to be set up and the end user just gets to enjoy? And either way would be fine with me, because I just get a kick out of connecting to something, and next thing I'm talking to people around the world. So back to that, N3WZU.
Yeah, fair enough. Is it fixed? And if not, how flexible will it be, or can it be? Keeping in mind that it's close, but not quite here. K6KD, I'm gonna pass it over to you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, there'll be several modules that will support transcoding, and you'll on the Z-Star side you'll be able to select which module you want to link to, or other reflectors that will be linked to that module. So you'll select that. You can also select which talk group you want to go to if you're on the DMR side. There'll be a one-to-one relationship between a module on D-Star and a talk group on DMR. A good part of the flexibility will come, I think, from the type of gateway. Maybe I'll use a gateway instead of access point or hotspot. How's that, Mike? Just to throw a little bit of confusion in there. If you have an open spot, you'll have the flexibility of using different DMR systems, up to 5 profiles. If you are using an MMDVM based host, especially with DMR Gateway, and there's a couple images that support that, you'll be able to go to various talk groups. Most people who have DMR radios are going to want to be able to use them on Brandmeister as well as on XLX. And with the gateways that are out now, it'll be as easy to go from one talk group to another and be able to switch systems. So I think there'll be a fair amount of flexibility. And so that gets into probably a different topic, for some point in this, discussing a different type of gateways, access points, hotspots. The whole thing confuses me. Back to you, Mike.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a moment, if not next, but not quite yet. So, N3WZU, does that make sense to you? And if not, let's say so, and we'll try to take it a little bit further. If you're on a DMR hotspot or a device with a DMR radio accessing the hotspot, and you're going to connect to a talk group, or however you go about it, the talk groups are going to be fixed. We're going to announce those. They'll be by module, and as John said, they will not be part of Brandmeister, because that would not be appropriate. And the whole purpose would be to find another way to connect to the constellation of X reflectors by a means other than D-Star, and to begin opening the door to what seems to all of us to be that, in the event that D-Star radios continue to get more expensive, that DMR is the choice when you purchase a digital radio. And whether you buy an open spot, RF Shark, or DV4 Mini, or whatever you happen to buy as a hotspot, and you choose to operate it as a I'm getting text messages in here. I'll get to them in a minute, and which is fine. So, and you'll be able to connect to the constellation, but it won't have to be expensive, if that as it may turn out to be an expensive D-Star setup. You can certainly go a less expensive setup. But the whole point is that for everyone that likes DMR, whether they have 100 D-Star radios or not, and wants to connect to the constellation, if you have, and this is going to be in the future, certain other systems, X reflectors, XLXs, that wish to also participate will be allowed to be added, but this is down the line. This is not going to be at the gate. And so there's going to be a lot of resource available on an open system basis outside of Brandmeister, but it's not going to prevent you from going to Brandmeister. You're just not going to use Brandmeister. You're just going to pop in a talk group that's pre-assigned and off you go, depending upon the module that you choose and what each module does and what you can expect to get there, if other than just connecting to the constellation, is going to be published and easily found as well. So with all that said, in 3WZ, you go ahead.
I think I saw another call sign pop in there real quick. It might have been ZL2RO. Maybe it was a double. Maybe it wasn't there. All right, very good. Well, it makes sense, but it doesn't because it's not done yet. And then I guess as an end user, like myself, whatever's there is there. I'm assuming with the dongle I'm using, the Northwest Digital dongle, my only option would probably be to connect to either DMR talk group or the constellation. And whatever it's connected to is who I'm talking to. As to where in the past, if I wanted to change reflector on a repeater, unlink it and then send the command to relink it to my next reflector. Those options are probably not even available for the dongle using the WinDV or BlueDV software. I do have a DV4Mini, so I could do the DMR side of things and come out here. So anyway, all right, it sounds like it's a work in progress and it's really cool. So I'm kind of getting excited to see how this goes because I know they've been talked about for years, being able to cross mode or find what they call maybe a chat room. You connect to that chat room on whatever device or access you have, and you come out everywhere else on everybody's perspective mode. So, all right, I'll leave you alone for a little while, Mike. But you know me, I'm always starting trouble. If I don't, I stir the pot. Thanks for answering my question, Mike. 7-3 all and 3WZU.
No problem, Wes. Thanks for asking. Yeah, when you think about it, we're just dropping the barrier between DMR and D-Star, and in doing so, D-Star users won't know the difference. I mean, the call sign still comes through on the radio, just as with DMR, and DMR users won't know the difference. And it's going to be kind of, cool. And like anything else, you can choose to use it or not. But we appreciate the question. Next, we say hello to ZL2RO. We got you in here. Go ahead.
ZL2RO. Thank you very much, Mike. I just wanted to make an announcement about our XLX 626 reflector. On our module B, we have a D-Star, Wise, F, and DMR bridge, a three-way bridge going on, where Yaesu Fusion can talk to D-Star, and Yaesu Fusion definitely can talk to DMR, and vice versa. Our Wise F reflector is NZXLX626 for the Fusion, and that's a working bridge at the moment on our module B on 626. I just thought it might be interesting to let you know there, Mike, and all the other listeners. Over.
Well, you're welcome to do so, and you just did. And I should point out that Z09DMR, that's an interesting call, posted the XLX626 bridge. So did you want to take it any further and describe the method by which the transcoding is happening on 626, or is that, a secret brew that you'd rather keep to yourself? ZL2RO, go ahead.
I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a secret brew. It's a brew that I'm not completely understand its software done, and that's done with some of the other buddies that are helping out with 626. But the Brandmeister DMR side that it will come out on is 530 999, and the bridge is the VK9 DMR -B. So I just thought might be interesting for people to know that we actually have it working on the XLX reflector, and just thought it would be interesting to put out there. Over.
I am glad you did, and that information is there, and also the link, and so congratulations. And, we're not going to profess to be the only network of linked reflectors in the world that has, that will have this transcoding going. It's just that the process that we're choosing is, hardware and software based, and I got to tell you, as we progress through this is, of course, is John's baby, K6KD, but, just the quality is amazing. And the nature of the technology is such that it's lasting. But that doesn't mean to say that this is the only way to go about skinning that cat. And the 626 XLX is a good example, and everybody should go over there from time to time and join in on the fun, just as we hope that you come to the constellation of X reflectors here and whoop it up. All right, let me see if there's anything further on 4K transcoding in our demo last week, and then we'll move on. Stations, please key up. All righty, nothing heard. Now, what? I took note both when Bob was running it when I was ill and last week, that I got this sense that there's this, well, there's no sense about it. It was kind of a sense here as far as this and that goes, but there seems to be this ongoing debate. Is DMR better than D-Star? Are the DMR radios better than the D-Star radios? And I hate to see that kind of discussion, because even though it's kind of fun to do, but it's like picking a fight of sorts. And it's my view and the view of others that it isn't so much which mode is better of those that are now open systems. It's probably better to separate it out and look at it differently, and that is the way you access the infrastructure that provides connectivity to that mode. That is it by radio, hotspot, repeater, etc. And then you talk about the infrastructure by which your mode is carried on to its destination, which can be an X reflector, can be Brandmeister, can be any number of things. And also, included in there is transcoding. So there are a number of ways of carrying DMR traffic and D-Star traffic and fusion. And also, as a separate little side note, I agree that C4FM is an incorrect way to describe generally fusion, because there's a whole bunch of C4FM codec-based digital modes, and the AC Fusion is just one of them. Of course, the AC Free Fusion is a closed system, and although we've been able to open it up with YSF reflectors and take the capability of fusion outside of the ASU Fusion iron curtain, so to speak. But I thought it might be interesting to engage in a discussion of how we should not be, holding up a DMR radio and a D-Star radio and saying, oh, this one sounds a little bit different, this has got to be better, and blah, blah, blah. And instead, look at it as two separate aspects, as I just described. And I'll take stations who wish to agree with this, or disagree for that matter, and wish to start a discussion on this topic. Stations, please key up.
ZL2R.
All right, I got ZL2RO. We appreciate you jumping in. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's just a question going back to something we discussed a wee while ago. And I want to apologise in advance if it's not the area to actually ask this question. And I can hang around and talk to the appropriate people if that needs to be the case about a interlink for this net on the basis that after the net it will be disconnected. It's just a request that I have mentioned once before, but I will sit back and listen and wait for the appropriate time. Mike, over.
Okay, you just hang on to that, and we'll pick that up in a minute. I just don't want to deviate from spending the time trying to introduce this topic, and we will. I'll call you back to pick that up. So again, what do you think about discussing the battle of open source modes, which is all we talk about, instead of saying, well, DMR is going to be better or DStar has to be better for whatever reasons you may believe that it is better, number of reflectors, number of whatevers, and instead talk about is, the method by which you use digital and the infrastructure that you access using the radio or device of choice. And that should be the debate, as opposed to saying one mode is better than another. And frankly, it's almost, this way too broad a brush to paint. There's far more to it than just listening to one versus the other or saying, oh, there's some trick. We've got 2 time slots, so therefore DMR has to be better. Well, that's not the way to approach it. That may be true, but that doesn't make it better. And so that's the discussion, and it's just a better way to look at things, and frankly, that's how I think we should approach it. And I'd like to take opinions on that. So, stations, please, Kia.
N3WZU.
Yeah, N3WZU, go ahead.
Alright, I really can't speak for what's happening after I key up my radio and whether it goes into a repeater, goes through its network, and how it encodes, decodes, breaks down the ones and zeros. On the user end, I have 3 HTs. I got a CS700, I got a ICOM 92AD, and I got a Yaesu FT1 XD, or whatever model that thing is. And I have to say, the audio coming out of, on my end, I like the Yaesu Fusion handy talkie speaker the best, the audio quality. But to use all 3 or one at a time, when I'm done and I hear the people's voice, it's all digital communication quality. And if I had to choose, I'd probably use the Fusion Handy Talk. But what happens, how the codec works, how it converts my analog voice to digitals and digital ones and zeros and sends it out the radio, and what happens in between there, and what's coming out the other person's speaker, and what comes back, I don't know what's going on. And to be honest with you, I don't know which one's the best. But I guess the point I would make as far as the end user, you might want to sample different radios and find out what sounds best to you, and what features you want. But as far as D-Star, C4FM or Fusion or any of the other digital nodes, I don't know which one's better, but I know which ones work for me. Back to you, Mike. N3WZU.
fair enough. One way of looking at it also is to make a list of the strengths of the D-Star infrastructure, the strengths of the DMR infrastructure, although for our purposes, we're not going to use much of the DMR infrastructure. But to me, how is it and why is it that, and how can DMR complement D-Star and vice versa? That is that as we evolve from just strictly a traditional D-Star infrastructure here, we are eventually going to be, and many others, not groups, not just our network, are going to be a D-Star DMR infrastructure. And so you have to view it based on flexibility, linking, open source, and all the other reasons why you even would bother to do it. Of course, the reasons that you described are good. It can be fine to say the radios are cheaper or, they sound better to me, but, I think that this discussion about what system do I choose is evolving now. And it's no longer, well, I'm going to call everybody up and see which radio they think is better. Instead, the choice that you make would be based on, in addition, of course, the pocketbook and lots of other considerations, but the infrastructure that you're going after. If all you want to do is, for example, be on Brandmeister, okay, don't buy a D-Star radio. On the other hand, there's a huge infrastructure in D-Star, and we're, trying to make it so that DMR has access to it, which they've always wanted, and D-Star is going to have a seamless access to DMR, and there's lots of reasons why that's good. I guess there's lots of reasons why that's bad. But it's just far better talking about how you access it, no matter how that may be, versus the infrastructure you're accessing, whether it's here or wherever, and how that infrastructure is set up. And you make your choices, because if you prefer one mode of operating and it doesn't work with a particular infrastructure, that's a consideration. If you like the way the particular infrastructure is set up and does things, then you have to ask, okay, what kind of access do I need to get to it, and then make your choice there. Just another way of looking at it, and I'm just throwing things out to start discussion. Perhaps this is just something that, to me it's interesting. Stations, please key up.
W6K.
And we see hello to Bob, W6KD. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mike, and everybody on the net. It is an interesting discussion, and it's the same question and same discussion had 6 months ago would have sounded somewhat different, and the same discussion and the same question 6 months from now is probably going to sound somewhat different as well. But the lines are definitely becoming much more blurred. The clear distinctions between the modes are becoming, less and less. There are still some, but, in the past, well, first of all, if you were in an area where, you were, basically your choices might very well have been driven by the decisions made by the local repeater club. Your local club or whatever. If they decided to be a D-Star club, well, then D-Star's kind of, that's probably what you did. If they were a DMR group, if they were a fusion group, that's what you did. And if you were somewhere that didn't have any of the above, D-Star was kind of the only option by virtue of the hotspot. That's something. D-Star has had the hotspot as a point of ingress for quite some time, 3, 4, 5 years. And so that was a real strength, and it was something very unique to D-Star. And And now we're seeing multi-mode hotspots built with inexpensive RF devices like the DV Mega, the OpenSpot, the DV4 Mini. So you can have hotspot access pretty much to all of the modes now. Let me change hands. So D-Star doesn't have that leg up so much anymore, although with Yaesu Fusion there are the YSF reflectors, and there is some limited connectivity to Wires X via some people put up nodes, but they have to buy the proprietary Yaesu connection infrastructure to make that work. And so yes, there's open source open source reflector infrastructure out there for Fusion, but it's not very well used. It's not very popular. Wires X is still it's still the big game in the Fusion world. And to get into Fusion, you either have to have access to a Fusion repeater, or you have to buy some fairly expensive Yaesu equipment to set up a hotspot. Basically a whole transceiver and an access unit and a dedicated computer to make it work. So that's kind of the tail end, Charlie. Then of course we've got Jonathan, G4KLX, the guy who wrote the most popular D-Star hotspot software.
KC5ALH, Big Spring, Texas.
Okay, KC5ALH doubled over me. Anyway, where was I? Anyway, so yeah, Jonathan has written a multi-mode hotspot called MMDVM, and some of the changes that are coming along in that will allow the MMDVM hotspots to not only to connect to the DMR.
Anybody on 555 tonight? KC5ALH.
Well, I keep getting knocked out by KC5ALH. He keeps transmitting over me. Anyway, so anyway, you can have a single hotspot that accesses both Brandmeister, DMR Plus, and now the XLX reflectors. So those lines are all being blurred as well. And one of the things that wasn't mentioned about one of the interesting things about the XLX reflectors, whether or not they do transcoding from the DMR side, the next generation of XLX reflectors are also DMR reflectors. So even if you don't have the hardware required to do transcoding, that XLX reflector still works as a standalone DMR reflector, which is something we haven't really had before. So now, just like you can stand up your own X reflector for your local club or for your statewide group or your RACES or Aries operation or whatever, you can now, well, not now, but in the very near future, when the next generation XLXs show up, you're going to be able to stand up your own DMR infrastructure. You don't have to go to Brandmeister. You don't have to go to DMR Plus. You can stand up your own XLX reflector and use it as a DMR reflector as well as a D-Star reflector. And if you have the wherewithal, you can actually make it cross over, and the two can talk to each other on a limited basis. But that requires hardware and some kind of specialized. It's not going to be something that you just do willy-nilly. That's a kind of a niche capability. But the bottom line, though, is that the big convergence, as I call it, is really upon us. And so what sets the modes apart today is a lot different than what set them apart 6 months ago or a year ago. And then I think the discussions are going to turn more to quality of the radios, quality of the audio, and the operation of the radios. DMR, even the inexpensive radios, is a strong contender there. And of course, pricing. You got your $500 ICOM radio versus a $85 DMR radio that works pretty well. So the economic piece of this is going to be huge, and the quality of the radios is going to start playing more and more of a factor as the differences in the network start to evaporate. With that, I'll send it back, 36KD.
W6KBM.
All right, KC5. KC5LH has got. Let me turn this down. I'm sorry, guys. Hang on. All right, let's see if I've got it. Okay. Anyway, KC5ALH. Hopefully you have the volume turned up now. Hot copy, M6HKH. All right, everybody. I'm sorry about the disruption of W6KD's transmission. And for those listening on 002, there was a doubling that knocked the audio out for a bit, although W6KD, for the most part, took the day in that double. But KC5ALH, I presume, unintentionally keyed up because he's got his volume down on 555, and hopefully he's rectified that, and we're going to call on him right now. Otherwise, we'll just have to wait for him to key up again. Anyway, KC5 ALH, I'll copy. And he does it. So W6KD, I understand why you unkeyed. Did you have anything further? We got like 90% of it.
No, I was finished. My final point there, if it didn't get through, was that the difference in capabilities of the networks, which were pretty striking until recently, are becoming less and less. The networks are becoming more and more integrated and more similar to each other, with the one exception of Yaesu and their proprietary access. There's an alternative there, but they got their proprietary access. But the quality of the radios, the pricing of the radios, I think are going to become the pivot point for people's decisions. And with hotspots available now to get to any of the networks, you're no longer dependent on the decisions of a local club. You can go anywhere you want with your own hotspot. In fact, I still maintain that's a better option even in the presence of a repeater. So there you go. Anyway, back to the net, maybe 6KD.
All right, Bob, appreciate it. Yeah, so it's no longer going to be, DMR as a system is better. It will come down to which radio sounds better to you as the end user, and that's a fine argument to make. And the cost and how you like to operate. And frankly, those that have DMR repeaters, for example, and for that matter, even the AC repeater systems, stations no longer are going to be dependent on them. Now, they're not going to go away. I mean, that is a way of accessing the various digital systems, but it isn't going to be necessary. Let's put it that way. And ultimately, I agree with Bob, the best way to access is by hotspot, aka access point for tonight. So, with that, let's take for the comments. What do you think? Is this meaningful? Are we all washed up on this, and do you see things going differently? Well, let's hear from you. Please key up now. All right, nothing seen or heard. I'm going to pick on K6KD because I didn't see him key up, and maybe he, well, I'm not going to guess at why he may have stepped away. But, John, I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, given your involvement in the 4K transcoding. If you don't mind, maybe you don't see things differently than what you've heard, which would explain why you and others may not key up. I just thought to further this a bit, we'd ask what you think, K6.
Okay, well, good evening again. I've got basically a similar view. I think that I think it always was kind of simplistic to say one mode was better than another, and maybe just a little bit of a wrinkle. I happened to hear on one of the talk groups someone from D-Star who was dipping his foot into DMR, and the guys told him how much better it was, that he ought to take his radio and, well, do something with it. They told him that the radio waves from the DMR radio, even though they're both FM carriers of similar frequency, that the waves out of a DMR radio travel faster and travel further, and you only need 1 watt in a DMR radio, and they both use different error correction, but similar. But you only use 1 watt in a DMR radio to get further than a whole bunch of watts, I think, the way they put it in the D-Star radio, and just a whole bunch of nonsense. And that probably characterizes a lot of what the arguments have been. I knew a D-Star reflector admin that in the early days was sold on DMR, and he told me that he not only did he sell his D-Star equipment, but I think he called for the fumigators to fumigate the room the D-Star equipment was in. Anyway, I guess all that's aside. I'm just mentioning that just to illustrate some of the foolishness that has characterized these discussions. But I guess my opinion is similar to the others. I think you have to look at it in terms of the access point method, or the access method, which consists of the radio and the hotspot or repeater and the infrastructure. In terms of the access points or hotspots or gateways, whatever you want to call them, I think are pretty comparable now in terms of features. Usually it's the same software that will run in any of the modes. In terms of the radios, yeah, I agree with what Bob said. Now, it's interesting, Wes, with the Fusion radio. I've got the Yaesu FT2, and that is, of all my HTs, I've got DMR, D-Star, and a couple Fusion. The FT2 is the absolute worst sounding radio of all of them. In fact, when I use a YSF reflector, which is a open source Fusion reflector, I'll pick up a DMR radio and use an open spot to convert from DMR to System Fusion. The only time I use the Yaesu FT2 is when I'm accessing my Wires X mode, which I don't access that often, but it's different opinions. I think of the radios, well, I timed out. Doggone it. Let me see. The DMR radios are designed for commercial environments, so both the mobile as well as the HTs, and because of that, they just sound better. In my way of thinking, my worst radio, the sounding radio, the Yaesu, and my best sounding radios, the DMR radios, are both using the same codec, AMI2+. So it's not the codec, it's not the fundamental system, it's the radio. And as far as the infrastructure goes, the YSFs don't generally. Well, I'm not going to get into that. the WiresX is kind of closed. In terms of Brandmeister is a good infrastructure. The XLX as a D-Star and DMR infrastructure. And one of the differences between that one of the things that make the XLX infrastructure unique from both a D-Star and now a DMR perspective is the ability to flexibly link reflectors, whether they be D-Star, DMR, or combinations. You can build a standalone DMR reflector, but you can also link it, and I think that's pretty unique to the XLX, the XLX system. So basically, bottom line, it's I'd say the infrastructures in terms of quality are comparable, just different features. And so it'll boil down to, I think, as a couple folks, including Bob, has said, that it's the quality of the radio. Back to you, Mike, K6K.
All right, John, appreciate it. Stations, please key up.
All right, Mike. Yeah, and the Yaesu Handy Talker, I have the model number 1. Oddly enough, that radio, you have to go in and crank the mic gain up to bring it up to a level where everybody on the group you're talking to they'll be comfortable with. And then if someone comes in with the FT2, the second model, you got to turn the mic gain down on that one. But I haven't really sat here and done this. I have the CS700, which is supposed to be commercial quality, and they've got a couple other models after that one. It's got some pretty loud audio. The thing that bothered me the most about being on a Moto Turbo repeater or a DV4 Mini on a DMR room or chat room or reflector, whatever you want to call it, the audio levels were just horrible. And in most cases, and especially on a Moto Turbo repeater, a lot of the guys that had the Motorola, high-end Motorola's had AGC built into them, and they would just crank the mic gain up and let the AGC do the leveling. And it doesn't work with any of the other radios. So, with that being said, I just seem to hear it in my house like the Yaesu handheld the most, simply because it's a dual band and I can go to FM or a Yaesu or C4 FM system. Although that Yaesu system here in Southern Maryland is almost non-existent. There's plenty of the repeaters, but they're not on the network, so that end of it makes it useless. So yeah, so you can sit there and all night long say my Chevy's better than your Ford. No, my Dodge is better than your Chevy. And you'll probably end up being what works best for you. All right, back in that N3WZU.
Well, you can actually still argue, I think, that whether Ford or Chevy are better. What we're limiting, though, is whether you should be on Route 66 or Highway 395. In other words, the debate used to be in justification of your investment in a particular closed system, why you think that system's better because of the features it provides, with the understanding that at that time you weren't going to talk to any other digital mode. In other words, you had to make a choice. The choice that you have to make is fading away from which infrastructure you've got to use. And again, it was closed then, not so closed now. Yaesu has, well, Yaesu itself is closed, but there are the YSF reflectors, which are open. But they're not supported by Yaesu, but they're Fusion, and they work just fine. But that aside, it's no longer, I can't take this highway because I want to take a different one over here. Now you're going to be able to travel along, in a sense, it's not strictly this, the same highway. It's just, what do you prefer to use? Is it going to be the Ford or the Chevy? What is bigger, badder to you? Runs faster, looks better, smells better, has a better stereo? And that debate's perfectly legitimate. But duking it out to defend, well, GMR's got this, and this, and D-Star sucks. I mean, that no longer and is really the argument. That's the sum of the point here, which is actually a good thing. You can choose. Well, anyway, I'm not going to repeat what I already said, what everybody else has said, because everybody's heard that. So, who else wishes to enter this fray and has an opinion? There's been lots of interesting points made. I'm surprised there hasn't been more challenges to them. Stations, please key up.
N5WD.
N5WD, go ahead.
All right, Mike, N5WD in Hunter, Texas. I have a question that bears on the subject of which one is better. With D-Star, of course, we have the ability to go to any one of the reflectors. I'm running a hotspot at DV Mega, so I can go to any of the REF reflectors or the XREF reflectors, and although I'm not really aware of what they are, I understand that there is something known as XLX reflectors, and I can probably also go there. On a DMR radio, how does one explore the different places like we can do on D-Star? For example, if I have a radio and it has 11 slots programmed into it for the various talk groups, is my access limited to just those talk groups? In other words, if I'm on a statewide talk group, can I get on a statewide talk group in Bozeman, Montana, for example, or is there any way to go over to somebody else's reflector that's not actively being repeated by a local repeater?
W6.
Got it. W6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, my comments pertain mostly to hotspots because it's a different animal entirely with repeaters. In the DMR world, the repeater operator has a great deal to do with making the choices for where that repeater can connect in terms of what talk groups. And typically, a repeater is only going to be connected to a single master server. A master server in the DMR world, you can think of that as being an analog to a reflector in D-Star. And you've got DMR Mark, which is the original, Motorola Amateur Radio Club that, they put their noses straight up in the air and buy only Motorola stuff and look severely down on anything that's not Motorola connecting to their network. Actually, they don't allow much in anything that's not Motorola to connect to their network. And you've got DMR Plus, which is a creation of the same guys that made the DCS reflectors for D-Star. You've got Brandmeister, which is that's the king of the hill right now in DMR. It's a open standard, not open source, but an open standard DMR master server network. You can think of it almost as a giant version of the Constellation here. And a talk group is essentially like a module on a reflector. So if you think of a master server as a reflector and a talk group as a module, like if you're on XRF002 alpha, XRF002 is the analog to the master server, and module alpha is the analog to talk group, 310 or whatever. It'll change hands. So anyway, if you have a hotspot, the newest version of Jonathan Naylor's MMDVM software, which is what you use with a DV Mega or with there are some specialized MMDVM boards. That software actually allows you to connect to different master servers by configuring your hotspot, just the same as you could connect to different reflectors today in D-Star by configuring your hotspot. So with your hotspot, you'll be able to set it up so that you can go to Brandmeister Talk Group 310, and then you can set your radio up to on a different channel to go to DMR Plus Talk Group 4003 or whatever, and then a different channel could be XLX212, Talk Group 4001, which is might be cross-bridged to D-Star module as well. So with a hotspot, you can pretty much go anywhere in the DMR world. With a repeater, well, yeah, you're far more limited. The rules are made by the repeater operators, and it's just not as flexible. If for no other reason than that hopping around between master servers is not going to be possible. So if your local repeater in DMR is on Brandmeister, then you're kind of stuck in the Brandmeister world. If your local repeater is on EMR Mark, then you're stuck in that world. So the DV Mega with MMDVM, the same DV Mega we've been using with D-Star for a long time, running the new MMDVM software will allow you to do that. If you get an open spot, it'll allow you to do that. I believe the DV4 Mini does it. I've heard the DV4 Mini handles DMR better than it does D-Star. I hope that's the case. And anyway, I think the multi-mode hotspot is, that's the up and coming thing. I will not be building any more single mode only hotspots from this point forward. It's a lot more flexible and interesting to be able to do other stuff. So back to that, W680.
Thank you, Bob. That's a really informative discussion. So, so I think at least N5WD. Anything further?
Yeah. And thank you for that explanation. It cleared up a lot of my misunderstandings. Hang on a second. Turn down the other radio. In that case, then I would venture to say that DMR probably suffers on the average user, at least around here in Dallas-Fort Worth, from a lack of flexibility when compared to D-Star. Like I said, as a out-of-the-box D-Star user, I can turn on my hotspot and go play almost anywhere, which is not going to be the case of the person who is getting up and talking on a DMR repeater, because from where I'm looking and listening, it appears more people getting into D-Star are going the hotspot and DVAP route than attempting to use the local repeaters. That may be a misconception on my part, but just listening to people talk, it seems that there are more people using that way of access to the world as opposed to what DMR users are. Now, I know most of the DMR users I know are using local repeaters. One or two of them have, one's got the BlueStack on the DV Mega, and the other, I'm not sure what he's using. But out of the folks in the local club that I'm in, only two of the probably 15 people that are on DMR use hotspots, which gives them the flexibility, but it doesn't give the person locally using a local repeater the same amount of flexibility. So if that's the case, then, I would venture to say that D-Star has the advantage in that regard. I don't know. As far as should we get into the arguments or the discussions with anybody? Yeah, I mean, somebody who's dead set in what they're doing and thinks that their particular choice is God's gift to the earth of communications is probably going to be pretty well convinced that they're using the best there is. So you're not going to convince anybody, but you never know who's listening. You never know who's trying to gain some information and learn what to do and how to do it. Because a lot of people are hearing the conversations of other people and then making their decisions on what they're going to do based on that. Does that make any sense, Mike? N5WD.
It does, but if you purchase a multi-mode hotspot, any of those that are described by W6KD, and you can build your own MMDVM and so forth, or you can buy a complete package. Now, the all-in-ones have some limitations, but for purposes of this discussion, if you have a multi-mode hotspot, which is really the bulk of the sales, I would think, the only real question is, what radio do you like? Unless that multi-mode hotspot demands that you use a specific radio to access it. And if it's truly a multi-mode hotspot, you can go everywhere. You like DMR? There you go. Or if you want to connect, let's change that. You like the DMR system? You like to be in Brandmeister? Fine. You want to go to a specific talk group? Fine. You want to access a repeater? You can do it, although the hotspot has nothing to do with that. On the other hand, you will be able to use whatever radio you choose that works with that hotspot and go to any of the modes that are available through the multi-mode hotspot. So with a radio of your liking in a multi-mode hotspot, you're pretty much everywhere. And no longer do you have to, stand in the corner and agonize over, well, do I plop my money down and hang out in DMR? Or do I, stand the test of time and the extensive network and so flexibility of D-Star? Do I prefer repeaters? Do I not like hotspots? And if you don't like hotspots, I mean, you're really going to fall behind the ball. I think hanging in on just a repeater, there's nothing wrong with a repeater. But if you want to roll with the flow, a multi-mode digital hotspot ends the debate. The debate that's left really is, which multi-mode hotspot do you like? If you want to buy an all-in-one package, or which one do you want to build, and which software and operating system do you want to download? But it's not that big of a deal anymore. Does anybody disagree with that, or did I misstate the state of affairs? Please key up.
ZL2RO.
ZL2RO, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Well, I've got a multi-mode hotspot now. My old DV Mega dual board Arduino. I upgraded the firmware. Bought myself a Yaesu FT70D Fusion radio. Just running that Pi-Star image on it, and I can do Yaesu Fusion, D-Star. If I had a DMR radio, I could do DMR. And if I had a P25 radio, I could do P25. And that was all on the upgrading of the firmware for my DV Mega to 3.14. And that's my low-powered hotspot, which I have just got into the world of Fusion on, and find the audio on Fusion to be very, very good. But D-Star's still my number one. But that's my multi-mode hotspot, which was I built myself with a Raspberry Pi, Arduino, and the DV Mega. And when I only recently found out I could upgrade the firmware and it could do all those modes. So I just thought I'd drop that in there, Mike. This is ZL2RO.
VK4.
I'm glad you did, and I appreciate it. Next, we say hello to VK4TUX. Thanks for being with us. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you for the net. I just wanted to fill on one thing on the DB Mega. It won't do P25 yet, even with the 314 firmware. So it'll do D-Star, DMR, and Infusion, but it won't do P25. The only hotspot actually that does P25 is the Zoom spot variations from Jim Classic ZUM, which are an excellent device actually. All the variations here, and they work fantastic. They do the whole 4 months. And even though they have the what is it, the 7126 chip or whatever it is, it works very good. It's got no relationship to the early D-Star attempts with that chip and a hotspot just for D-Star a few years back. So the modern Zoom spots work excellent, but they do P25 as well. And also the other gentleman talking about P25, the Brandmeister is a very free system, and the repeater owners have control by a web interface on which talk groups are static or dynamic on their system. But it's the users for those repeaters can do with it. They can use any talk group they wish. They can make up their own talk group themselves. And they've got 2 slots to work with, time slot 1 and time slot 2. And there is information on the Brandmeister wiki regarding the talk groups available and the reflectors that are connected to those. The best analogy for it is a talk group is actually much like a StarNet. It's like a routed call. That's how it works. I run the 5051 server here in Australia, so I've got a bit of knowledge of the inside workings of the Brandmeister server. But it's a routed call, and then some of these talk groups are fixed to a reflector, which are utilised through talk group too. And you can do a manual dial or a private call to link to it, or you can just use the talk group connect directly. But all you have to do is program them up into your radio on color code 1 and the group call contact matching the talk group number, and off you go. You can key it up and talk and watch the Brandmeister dashboard to check your result. Anyway, that was it. So I just wanted to just to clarify that the DB Mega doesn't do P25 there, Phil, currently. It may happen later on. Back to their control. Thank you, Mike, VK4TUX.
K6.
K6 Katie recognized. Adrian, thanks for that clarification. That was perfect. And I think, though, that there is an issue with the user-defined talk groups. I think K6 KD is going to clarify your clarification, which is what we do here, of course. Let's find out. K6 KD, go ahead.
Mike, no, I wasn't going to address that. I was going to comment on a couple things that the station in Texas said and what you said and what Bob said, but not that particular point. So let me just pass it back to you first.
Oh, okay. So for Adrian, VK4TUX, I've been reading that Brandmeister no longer allows users to create talk groups on the fly, and they've retreated to the policy that, well, they're claiming has always been in place, but I guess was not enforced, and that is that you cannot on your own unilaterally create a talk group. You have to apply for one and get it approved. And I noticed on their API list they stripped out all of the unauthorized, quote unquote, or unapproved talk groups that my understanding was they were user defined. Is that your understanding as well, Adrian? VK4TUX, go ahead.
I'm unaware of that, Mike, and over here, of course, well, the 5.8.5.1's got no restrictions on it whatsoever, and people can just program a group call a random number, and if 2 or 3 people do it, they can all talk to each other on it. It works fine. I'm not sure what's going on in the USA then. If they've got they brought in extra rules, they do have some extra things to try and simulate sea bridges and stuff like that, especially over in your side of the country. The Norkel's got a bit of that stuff going on, and I know they've got some special rules that server based, but I guess that's driven by the sysops on your side of things. So it may be different over here, but generally, and I've done this with stations in the USA as well. We've just a group number, and it's worked fine between us. So I'm not aware of that restriction. So I guess maybe I'll need to check it out a bit more as well. If it, I can certainly say that it tests well here and with other stations, but there's no real need to do it. There's plenty of existing talk groups to use, of course, and many that are established that are unused. So there's really there's a multitude, hundreds of them. So there's really no need to make any more. I'm not trying to say that there is, but all I'm just getting at really is it's a very free and easy system as far as I can see. Back to net control, N6 HKH VK4TUX.
Oh, I agree. Brandmeister in its present iteration is just as you described, an easy and friendly group, and it works well. You know, it could be that this is a policy which, as I understood it, is a reinstatement of, as he described, an existing policy, although it was, quite frankly, ignored. And it could just be the U.S. Masters. And, you know, that's why I wanted to know what was going on there. No restriction on your end. I mean, you would have heard about it by now. So it could be just a U.S. Master issue. We'll see what happens. Thanks for being with us. All right, K6KD, let's pick you up now with your discussion and your responses. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I will comment on that on that point. My understanding is that it's not just U.S. and that it has been an existing policy. I don't think they're preventing at the moment people from creating talk groups. I think one of the problems is that people are creating talk groups that don't correspond to the international standards on prefixes, and as a result, it's led to some inefficient routing in the system. So I don't know if that's the case, but that's kind of my understanding. What I was going to comment on first to the station in Texas, who which is more flexible. I think if you have a DMR radio with a hotspot that's capable of DMR, I think the flexibility is comparable to a D-Star radio with a D-Star hotspot or multi-mode hotspot operating in D-Star. In both cases, you have a great deal of flexibility. And as Adrian alluded to, the Brandmeister the Brandmeister hose and the Brandmeister website gives you a list of a lot of talk groups. As far as the D-Star, I'll put a plug-in for the X-Reflector directory that I maintain that includes XLX reflectors, XRF and XLX reflectors at xrefl.net. That's X-Ray Romeo Echo Foxtrot Lima.net. Has a link to dashboards and also sponsoring organizations where they exist. Let me reset real quick. I want to sort of maybe lightly disagree with what Bob said, but actually and plug one of Bob's D-Star Commander. When Bob said that he would probably not build a single mode hotspot, well, I would, because most of the time, and this gets into another topic completely, but most of the time when I build multi-mode hotspots, I prefer to use them in a single mode anyway. Just for, it's for me, it's cleaner and less confusing. But when it comes to D-Star, I think if I'm building a hotspot just for D-Star, I'm going to use D-Star Commander because I think it has by far the most features for D-Star. It's not, that Bob added to it. So I still see D-Star Commander as having I don't know how long Bob wants to support it, but it, in my opinion, has a long history or a long future. The one last point I wanted to clarify, let me reset real quick. I think it might be possible for people to misinterpret, Mike, what you said about the flexibility of multi-mode hotspots, being able to choose your radio and go anywhere. Right now, the only hotspot that does any sort of conversion, to my knowledge, is maybe there's some of the others like that I'm not familiar with, but between the DV Mega and the OpenSpot, the only one that converts between formats is the OpenSpot that converts between DMR and System Fusion. You can use a DMR radio and go to a YSF fusion reflector, or a Yaesu radio and go to a DMR talk group. Outside of that, the MMDVM hotspots do not do any any transcoding or conversion within a codec. So if you're going to use MMDVM, you have the choice. You can go anywhere, but you're going to need the appropriate radio. If you have a D-Star radio, you're going to go to D-Star. If you have a DMR radio, to DMR, and Fusion to the YSF reflector. So you can't, you can't pick up a D-Star radio and go to DMR just because you're using a multi-mode hotspot. So anyway, just wanted to clarify that. Back to you, Mike, K6KD.
Well, I'm glad you did, John, because maybe my mouth is moving independent of my brain, and I did not mean to imply that any multi-mode hotspot would be able to go anywhere, and it's just a matter of what I really didn't state it well, and thank you for clearing that up in case there was any misunderstanding. And I learned as I go along here as well. That's why I insist that if you hear a misstatement or something that doesn't sound right, please key up, because I'll never take offense to it. I'll just look like an idiot if I feel like I was an idiot, which in this case, maybe halfway. Very good, John. Thank you. All right, let's see where we're at. I don't have any further stations. Is there further discussion on this topic? Do you have any questions about what you've heard? Please key up.
W6KD.
W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought I'd piggyback a little bit, maybe clear over. I didn't say I wouldn't run a hotspot in a single mode, like with D-Star Commander, for example, which I don't plan on, orphaning anytime soon. But the hardware that I'm, the last 3 hotspots that I've built have been using multi-mode capable hardware, the DV Mega in particular. So even though I'm running D-Star Commander in D-Star only mode, it doesn't do the other modes. I still have the ability to pop the SD card out, put in MMDVM, and run it in Fusion or DMR mode. So I'm just saying that I wouldn't buy a piece of hardware that's single mode. I'm not really a believer in multi-mode operation on a single device, where a device automatically switches around between modes, because it just introduces a lot of complexity and anyway, what I do is I configure it for, I have multiple hotspots, and I configure each one for a particular mode and a particular frequency, and I use it with a particular radio so anyway, that way I don't have to wonder, why it is my hotspot won't respond to my radio. Well, because it's currently broadcasting something on Fusion or something, and so I don't typically do that. But I think there's a strong argument for not buying single mode hardware anymore. I won't buy another DVAP, for example, because that's D-Star only. The last 2 devices that I bought were OpenSpots, and I use those. I've been experimenting with them, but anyway, operating a hotspot in a single mode, I don't think there's a problem with that. In fact, that's how I prefer to do things. But yeah, buying something that's just limited to one mode or another anymore is potentially short-sighted because I'm not betting on whose gonna whose numbers are gonna rise and whose numbers are gonna fall. But I can tell you that my gut feel is that when you can go out and buy a reasonably decent quality radio for around $100 on one mode and it's $500 on another, that tells you something. Back to net, W680.
It seems to me, Bob, that based on your discussion and the comments from the stations ahead of you, that if you happen to be lucky enough to have one of everything, that is, you have, you're in your, just a minute. You like digital. You've got D-Star, you've got DMR, maybe even picked up a fusion radio, which seems to be common. You like to, there are several stations over the past many months that have keyed up and said, well, I'm still in the D-Star, but I just want to check out fusion. And in that instance, where you've got the radios, it seems that you're better off buying a multi-mode hotspot. On the other hand, you're new. You haven't made your radio selection yet, and you're trying to decide which is best. Would a multi-mode hotspot still suit you based on, the decision left being what radio do you like? Is that a fair statement? W6KD, go ahead.
Well, if I were talking to a new ham or a new digital ham, somebody that's been around but hasn't been playing with this stuff before, I would still steer them to a multi-mode hotspot because you don't know what you don't know. You're not going to go out and buy one of each when you're brand new to it. But well, first of all, it doesn't really cost you anything more. The DV Mega is competitively priced. The Zoom Spot board looks like it's going to be around the same price as a DV Mega. I don't know what the DV4 Mini is. The Open Spot's a little bit more expensive, but it's it's kind of more of a turnkey. Anyway, it's in it's in the ballpark too. If you include what we used to spend for DVAPs and that kind of stuff, it's right there in the ballpark as well. It's a little bit more expensive than some of the other options, but you don't have to buy a Raspberry Pi or any of the supporting hardware with it either. So, but anyway, I digress. The bottom line though is that it's flexible. It can do any of them. So if you buy D-Star radio and discover that you'd rather have a DMR someday, you can do that without having to build a new hotspot. Or if you want to have both, you can do that. It's more flexible and it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't really cost more. So, sorry to Robin, but I can't in good good conscience recommend somebody buy a DVAP now because it's too limiting. There's lots of other options out there that will do what it does and then a lot more. So that's how I would counsel a new guy. Is it's always smart to look ahead to the future. If you can get more capability for the same price, why wouldn't you? Back to that W680.
All right. Thank you. That's what I would have wanted to find out. Stations, please key up. All right. So it seems like we've talked this through, and this is a topic I think that will come around again. So without stations keying up, I'll move on. But first, I want to go back and give ZL2RO, who kindly let me pass and continue with the topic at hand, is waiting on his question. So let's take your question again, because at this point, it may be that nobody remembers it. So ZL2RO, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mike. My question was, and it was touched probably a few months ago. about linking our reflector, our XLX reflector, one of our modules, to your net for the duration of your net. I know that I had an email back. I can't recall who it was from now. I'd have to go back through my notes, but that it would only be accepted if there was a disconnection at the end of this net, which is perfectly fine. I just wanted to know if we could address that and maybe get the ball rolling. Over.
Well, I don't see why not. Let me see who on the system would like to respond to this question that is responsible for administratively providing for those links between X reflectors. Please key up.
K6KD.
K6KD, go ahead.
I think this kind of thing is something that we need to think about and consider probably offline. I guess in general, I think linking is not a bad thing. I'm a little bit concerned with all the bridges that they've got on that and the potential impact on the constellation. When we're talking about let's say the 4K transcoding, our approach, we know what it sounds like, but even so, we are going to introduce it very slowly because we don't want to take a chance of having something that is maybe new or experimental interfering with the stability of the net. With another reflector that has all the all those different bridges on there, I think we just have to look at it to make sure that bridges. If you're involved with a bridge, it's a great thing, and you'll put up with a little bit of if there are issues or the quality, you'll put up with that. But if you're not directly involved in it, what is neat to one person will be annoying to somebody else. So I just think we have to look at it in some detail. Back to you, Mike.
VK4.
Perhaps this is something that needs to be discussed off the net and can be done by email. Let's see if that's what he wants to do. In the interim, though, VK4TUX keyed up. Let's take Adrian, and then I'll be back to ZL2RO. Adrian, go ahead.
Okay, Mike, I just wanted to point out that only one module on the XLX626 has got the bridge to both the D-Star and the C4FM. And all the other modules are just the native D-Star as per normal. If any one of those other modules was used for the link, there would be no interaction with the bridges and the interlink cover.
Alrighty. So it still seems to me that perhaps so ZL2RO, have you communicated with K6KD or vice versa? And can we work it out that way? I think that's how request for connecting X reflectors takes place, since both sides have to implement it, and any concerns either side should have can be probably better done by email. ZL2RO, how do you want to proceed? Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you, Adrian, for pointing it out. Yes, that our bridging is on one module only. All the other modules are D-Star only and will remain only D-Star. But that's fine. I'm happy to offline, or if we can QSY somewhere else at another time. Is it K6KD, Bob? Oh no, sorry, I got that wrong. Is it W6KD? Anyway, I'm happy to do that. There was some correspondence, and there was a stipulation email to me saying that yes, it could happen if there was it was the D-link at the end of the net. And that's, I mean, the only reason I'm requesting this is that a lot of people here in New Zealand love listening to this, and we're just giving them a central hub to come to, which will have an interlink to you guys, which would be really appreciated. So I'm happy to go down I'm happy to go any way that will make this happen. So yeah, if it's offline or we go somewhere else to talk about it, I'm happy to do either. So I'll wait for the reply back to Net Control.
All right. So I've got your email address here. Just to and just to confirm, is it the extra.co.nz email address? NZO2RO. Go ahead.
Yeah, QSL. It's ZL2RO@extra.co.nz. That's correct. That's correct, Mike. Over.
All right, I've got part of that email chain. I'm going to forward it to both of you, and then the two of you can communicate by email. And that probably would be the best way to go about this and not take up that time for something that probably is not of interest to those that don't own reflectors. K6KD, how about you? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't recall any discussion about requiring a disconnect at the end of the net. I don't recall that. And it looks like based on what Adrian said, and just looking at the 626 dashboard, the module B is what's linked to YSF and DMR. So if the bridging is only on that one module B, I probably not an issue. We have two ways of this is a specific thing. It might be. Maybe this would be of more general interest. There are a couple ways in which an XLX reflector can link to the constellation. One way is by linking the XLX reflector, in this case 626, to our XLX reflector 212, which is called an interlink, and that would be a possibility because that connects like modules, A to A, B to B, C to C. And you'd want to get the constellation, you'd want to link to 212 alpha. The other possibility is establishing a link from an XLX, the link would be established from an XRF reflector directly to an XLX reflector. And if we do that, we can from that right now, from the DXRFD reflectors, we can link to modules A, B, C, or D. So I mean, there's some options. We can. I think that kind of is an interesting linking that is of more general interest. So thought I'd mention it. Anyway, back to you, Mike. N6HKH, K6KD.
All right, I got a KD. That was you. Go ahead.
No, but we didn't. I talked to Bob. Neither of us heard you come back after I finished, so waited for a while. So I just wanted to key up real quick to make sure that you weren't talking and not going anywhere. Back to you.
Are you accusing me of keying up and talking and not going anywhere? Well, you wouldn't be alone. All right, thanks. Anyway, I just posted the email to you guys just so you can cross email, we'll get each other's email address, and then we can take it from there. All right. Let's see. Where are we at? We are at. Let's do open questions real quick before we get on. I do want to make note about the solar eclipse and some of the activity happening on the constellation, and there's a couple other issues that we may want to squeeze in, but this would probably be a good time to take a break to see if anyone has a question of a technical or non-technical nature, although we try to keep it technical and not talk about just basics, but, I'll be the decider for that. Or a topic that you'd like to have discussed, such as the question that Phil has brought up. This is our open segment. We'll do it right now. Stations, please key up.
K6KD.
K6KD, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out real quick when you mentioned the discussion of a special net for the eclipse. There's also the other, maybe you mentioned it, I don't think so, but the other regularly scheduled nets on the constellation. And on the, if anybody goes to xrefl.net, it's a listing of X-Reflector, including XLX dashboards. It also includes discussion of all the special event net along with the regularly scheduled nets on the constellation, which include, in addition to this one, V-Star Users Net, 100 watts in a wire net in particular. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that, Mike, just to remind you. Back to you.
All right, well, then we'll just get into the solar eclipse net. I'm a bit confused, though, because, let me unconfuse you. Usually I mention the nets at the end of each roundtable, the nets that are held here. And so, John, tell me again where these nets are posted, because I missed that. I didn't see, hang on, let me scroll over here. I don't see, it's not on the landing page. And we have two kinds of nets. We have the regular ones, the ones you mentioned, and then we're going to have this solar eclipse net that's going to be hosted by those guys, but obviously it's just going to be August 21st. So tell me again where they're posted, if they are posted, because they're not on the forum board. At least I don't see them there. Am I overlooking something? K6KD, go ahead.
No, they're posted on the X-Reflector directory page, xrefl.net, X-Ray Romeo Echo Foxtrot Lima.net, in some detail. Back to you, Mike.
Okay, well, you'd think that they should also be posted here, but we'll worry about that. Well, I didn't see anybody else key up. Let me just call one more time before we get into the solar eclipse and what to expect. Any questions of an open nature? It can be about what you heard tonight, could be unrelated to what you've heard. You guys know anything and everything, as long as it's related at least loosely to D-Star and Open Digital Systems. Let me just check one more time. Anybody? Please key up.
N5WD.
N5WD, go ahead.
N5WD. Mike, I've seen several occurrences of an experimenters group mentioned in the X-Reflector directory, but I've yet to find out where that group is. I suppose it's on another constellation, but is it? Can you give me some idea of what it is, when it meets, etc.?
Sure, and we're going to keep K6KD busy because I think he keeps tab of that group. I think. K6KD, what do you know? Go ahead.
There's an amateur radio experimenters corner. And it's there's a Yahoo group that deals with that, and let me bring up the actual name of it. Amateur Radio Experimenters Corner. It's a Yahoo group, and there's a group of reflectors that are linked. I don't know how active it is, but one of the constellation reflectors, 310, is all let's see, 310 and both and 555 module B, 310 module B, module Bravo, and 555 module Bravo are both linked to this Amateur Radio Experimenters Corner. So you can look at the either of those dashboards and see how much traffic there is that come in on module B and get an idea of what's going on. So anyway, that's probably the easiest thing. Back to you, Mike.
Well, let me make it easy. The Experimenter's Corner, which is on Module B, and it's right there in the dashboard for those two John said, it's XRF727A. That's where you find them, if you're so inclined. And that, I think, is their lead reflector, similar to XRF002, but not having listened there for a while, I agree with John. That the activity may not be great, but there you go. The Yahoo group can easily be found by just putting in Experimenter's Corner, and you should be able to find it. And I don't think I've subscribed to that. And oh yeah, I am, but I'm not sure what the precise name. Anyway, you're not going to have any problem finding it because, oh yeah, I do. It is, guess what? I gotta fire this up to get it. So, play along here for a moment. It is the Yahoo Group Amateur Radio Experimenters Corner. Hey, what a surprise. Who knew? 727 Alpha would be their reflector. Let us know if you find anything interesting going on over there. And thanks for reminding me, John, that we've got two. I just forgotten that two of our modules are linked in there too. They're friends. All right, to stations, anything further on open questions, open issues before we solar eclipse everybody? Please, Kia.
Just to say howdy from Hamilton, New Zealand.
Hey, Brian, Z01HN. Well, howdy. Right back to you. Appreciate it. Stations, please key up. All right, anything seen or heard? All right, so the solar eclipse is, if you haven't heard that it's going to be on August 21st, let me know where you've been hiding because it's a good place to hide from everything. And, this is a unique thing, the total solar eclipse that causes the shadow of the moon to traverse the U.S. It starts up in Oregon and in a path that you've seen on, just about everywhere to South Carolina. I think it's going to last about 90 minutes. Anyway, radio amateurs are all over the place with experiments and nets, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. And ARRL, in today's ARRL newsletter, reminds everybody about the Solar Eclipse QSO Party, which is a special operating event that's organized by the Ham Radio Science Citizen Investigation, Ham SCI. I have no idea what they do otherwise. I don't know if they, hang around certain areas of the Nevada desert or they do solar eclipses exclusively, but they're going to study the ionosphere effects and have stations, participate. There's event rules and operating procedures that everybody can be part of. And of course, there's nets and nets and nets and nets and nets. But one of the coolest ones is actually going to be on the constellation. And before I remind everybody, because the information about it is on xrefl.net, but still it'd be kind of interesting to have a discussion about it. Let me see if any of the net controls that are from this is put on by the 100 Watts on a Wire and the D-Star Facebook page group that has the two nets on Tuesday and Saturday. If any of the net controllers are with us and would like to describe what they intend to do, let's get it firsthand. Stations, please key up. Well, not hearing anybody, that probably explains why I have all this information in my possession. But they're going to have 4 net controls, and let me flip over to the announcement. It's really brief. You can join them here on the constellation of X reflectors, known as the. Let me make sure that, the Kings of Digital Constellation Reflectors. I just want to make sure we're hosting it. It didn't seem, let me stop rambling. And the net will begin at 9 a.m. Pacific, which will be 12 noon Eastern, just prior to the start of the eclipse in Oregon. And the net here will run until just after 1 p.m. Pacific, or 4 p.m. Eastern, after the moon's shadow passes off the coast of South Carolina. The net will be on this constellation, the Kings of Digital constellation, the one you're listening to now. And let's see. Everyone in the path of the eclipse, as well as those wanting to keep up to date with the events as they happen, are encouraged to link your D-Star repeaters, access points, dongles, to the constellation and share what is happening in your area. So this is going to be a verbal announcement here for those that want to know who can't be in the path. And the path is fairly narrow given the size of the United States. And they anticipate, despite there being lots of nets, and certainly if it's D-Star and you've got a repeater or a reflector, you can link into the constellation and, help us understand what's going on. But this is going to be a long event. We're going to let it roll. It appears to be on Module A, which makes sense, on Monday, the 21st. And I'm assuming that the more information about the eclipse and its path with the link can be found on xrefl.net, and certainly links to the 2 nets, their home pages should be there as well, but we may want to put a link in our landing page to XREFL so you guys can have that. Anyway, just want to make sure everybody was aware of it. And I'm curious to find out, is anybody out there got their own net or thing going? I mean, this is not, one of these, be here or be square, but what are you guys going to be doing for the eclipse? Amateur radio-wise, more specifically D-Star-wise, besides just calling up on the radio and saying, hey, I see it. Is there an angle or an approach that you're taking that is different than just keying up and saying, here's what I see, which, is going to be fun for those of us that won't be, in the path. So what's happening in your neck of the woods, please, Kia? All right, nothing seen or heard. Well, there's apparently going to be on some of at least the cable news channels, continuous coverage of the eclipse. What the intended cover is not entirely clear. There are multitudes of websites that remind everybody, as we all should know, you just don't stare at the sun. I don't think that's any issue with us in this hobby, but it might be fun to hear what methods by which you're going to attempt to watch the eclipse, either fully or not. And I've also heard, just a minute, as I clear multiple frogs out of my throat, that, and I've heard this in the constellation, a number of stations are actually leaving their home, which would get, as we would hear, just a partial view and traveling to and staying in hotels with outrageous daily, if not hourly rates for the eclipse to be able to view it and bring in all their solar eclipse equipment of all ilks, from pinholes and paper to sunglasses to fancy telescopes to pretty much portable solar activity stations. I mean, observing solar activity is quite a hobby in and of itself. And it's going to be fun to hear, at least not what the plans are with what you saw. And if, in fact, that stripe, that path along the U.S., the eclipse caused everything in that path to melt, vaporize, get consolidated, and if aliens are seen or anything else that is thought to occur, taking all kinds of unusual, how can I describe this? People are ascribing almost religious and mystical purposes and results from the solar eclipse, which completely mystifies me, but who am I to say that makes it more fun? I will be observing from afar. Anything further on the solar eclipse? Anybody want to repeat on the net that we'll be having here, which should be fun to listen to? Stations, please key up. Alrighty, nothing further on that. We will cause a link to be put in the shop box someplace because I think it should be there because a lot of people will go there. But thanks to John for getting it in xrefl.net. Let's see, what else do we have in front of me? Actually, at this point, what I have in front of me, either the stations involved have said they're not here now, or I think it's probably a little bit late to start into a major discussion. So instead, I'm going to find out by calling for stations what we should be talking about right now, some information you wish to pass along, announcements that came to mind, or anything else for the good of the net. This would be the time to express them. You know how to go about doing it. Stations, please key up.
ZL2UDF.
ZL2UDF. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mike, and evening there. It's just a hello from ZL2. That's all.
Fair enough. Stations, please key up. Well, nothing there. So let me ask this in a different way. And John, thanks for posting the link in the shout box to xrefl.net. It's the least we can do. I mean, that's going to be quite a haul, even for several net controllers to hang in there and take reports from everybody during the length of this eclipse. So what is it that we didn't talk about tonight? What if you had me in the corner of a coffee shop or a bar, and we're talking about the round table that you are upset because you haven't heard a particular topic or something that is of interest to you that was not discussed. That's, of course, within, what we do here, which we all know is D-Star and Open Digital Systems. So, let me have it. Stations, please, key up. Aha. Nobody keyed up. Any questions about what you've heard tonight? Anything bother you? Did you, have to set the mic down and run outside for a breath of fresh air because something was said that sounds either too good to be true or terrifying. Any follow-up that you'd like to do? Because if not, we'll probably be done for tonight. So, fair warning, stations, please key up.
KC2IDB.
Hey, KC2IDB. Thanks for being with us. Go ahead.
Yeah, I figured I'd break up the silence there for a few minutes, but dropping in for the first time in quite some time. Figured I'd say hello and just mention the solar eclipse. I plan to make the 700 or 800 mile or so trek down to Tennessee to go see it down there. We're going to make a whole event of it and visit the Huntsville Hamfest first. So I'll leave Friday, head down, go see the Hamfest, and then head north on Monday to see the eclipse. So we're making a whole thing of it, and then head straight back for work the next day. So yeah, there you go. I'll send it back over to you there, Mike. Good talking to you. And what was it? And I can't remember now. Yeah. Back to you, Net Control. KC2IDB.
Yeah, okay, John. Ken. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been a while. So, there are other stations, I don't think you're part of it, that during the week here on the Constellation, we're also talking about Tennessee. Is it the Huntsville Hamfest that's the draw and then they're staying nearby, or is this kind of the gravitational center of the amateur radio world best suited for viewing, or is it that they're keeping out everybody else? Does a amateur radio station own a hotel and getting a deal? Do you know? It just seems odd that I've heard Tennessee, which is fine. It just, there's other states. KC2IDB, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. And from my understanding, Tennessee is supposed to be the most popular all around. The highest turnout is expected to be in Tennessee, and I don't know why. It could be, it's going to be the longest amount of time that it's going to be in that state or what, but my particular drive, a friend of mine who's coming, who actually invited me to go, put it that way, he said, yeah, we'll go down to the Huntsville Hamfest and see about that, and then come up and we'll go to the solar eclipse. So we're staying down toward Huntsville, drive up that day, and finish the trek home that day as well. So I don't know. I think traffic's going to be a thing with as many people as supposed to be going. But we'll see. We'll see how things play out. It may or may not work the next day, which my employers. But yeah, nothing special other than that for me. Back to you.
Well, just curious. I mean, I did do a little Google on it. There are some articles that tend to claim that the eclipse will be viewable for a few seconds longer than other locations. And Eclipsophile, pretty interesting, seems to not believe that, but then it doesn't matter. Why not? There is quite, I see, the center of the eclipse, as it passes through Tennessee, I see what's going. Yeah, there's a lot. There are just a bunch of major cities and lots of places to stay. Some of the states, because Nashville's in the path, Huntsville, yeah, and some of the other paths, some of the other portions of the states, and Look, don't go after me if you live in another state that the eclipse passes through for total, and you think that I don't know the big cities in your state, but there seem to be a lot of big cities in the Tennessee area, and why not? You know, poor Tennessee doesn't get the attendance or the attention, I should say, of the amateur community that perhaps it should. And I'll probably later on find out that if I had been there at the time of the total eclipse, that I would lose weight and grow back hair. Yeah, but I'll just have to suffer without it. See, here's another site that says, if you don't see the solar eclipse racing over the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, don't even bother getting up in the morning. So there. Ken, thanks for being with us. Stations, please key up. Well, I'm going to assume that from the silence, this is a great time to bring the Thursday night D-Star Roundtable to a conclusion, and I'm going to do just that. So at 21:35 hours here on the Pacific Coast, we're going to conclude the net for this Thursday. Next Thursday, we're going to have quite a discussion. We're going to get into MMDVM repeaters and MMDVM gateways and a lot of interesting stuff from both the repeater operator owner and the user operational issues. Enough about those repeaters and how they work has been fleshed out. There's enough of them up and being used that I think this information is worth discussing, along with some other very cool topics for which we hope to have some experts participate with us next Thursday. In the meantime, I want to thank, though, everyone who keyed up here tonight, because without your key-ups, we would not have a net. And for those that want to take a look at the shout box, that'll be cleared out here within 15 minutes after we're done. Move to the shout box history, so it's not going to go away, and things that scroll off on your screen on the Roundtable Forum board will be resurrected for purposes of the shout box history. And the podcast will be up, if not later tonight, first thing in the morning being Friday, because it's not Friday here yet. I want to mention that we have nets, besides this one, on the Kings of Digital Network, the constellation of repeaters. John mentioned them. I'm going to say them again. Tuesdays, the 100 watts and a wire net meets at 6 p.m. Mountain, which is 000 UTC. And the D-Star Users Group with that control VE6DV Jeff. You hear him during the day here from time to time. That's Saturdays at 6 p.m. Mountain, again 000 UTC. And that same group will be hosting the Solar Eclipse Net that we've already talked about, for which a link is posted in the shout box. I want to thank all of those who put time in with this particular roundtable, this constellation of X-Reflectors and the Kings of Digital Network, because I couldn't do it all, and they do such a great job and provide the technical support. You hear them pretty regularly during the week, but they deserve mention. W6KD, K6KD, KK6MYS, Mr. Podcast, WB5EKU, and WA6JFK. Thanks to each and every one of you. I'm going to depart down the hallway as I always do. I hope to be back here in a little while, although I'm going to get a bite to eat. In the meantime, please join us here on this X-Reflector group. Just a second. As there's usually somebody around to talk to, you'd be surprised who you find, both famous, infamous, and not so. But it's always interesting, and it's just another group of persistently linked reflectors that you can hang out on, and you never know, there may be some further talk about Portkey transcoding. If you have any topics you'd like to talk about, anything that you'd think is appropriate for this roundtable, you can post it in the shout box. The shout box is open 24/7. Just keep in mind it's not the appropriate place for starting topics. That would be the current discussions folder that you'll find at the top of the shout box. The landing page of the Roundtable Forum board. And be sure to peruse the rest of the forum page, because it's pretty tricky. If you want to get our email and monthly newsletter, be sure to click on the link to subscribe. And if you're into Twitter and want to be tweeted at with some interesting stuff that we're working on now, besides just saying, hey, the net's going to start, join us on Twitter. You'll find the link there as well. That's it for me. I appreciate it. I have so much fun here, and I appreciate you guys being with us, whether live or recording. Everybody have a great weekend. Talk to you on D-Star, N6HKH. Good night.